What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the next part in the Build a Spotify App in Swift series. In the last part, we wrote out a bunch of API calls for our first tab here for Browse, and we wrote up all the models and all that good stuff. We're just going to wrap that up in this video since that one got kind of long before we get into the UI and all like the nice presentation stuff in the next video. So that all said, if it sounds good to you, make sure you start by just throwing the like button. As per usual, helps out with the videos tremendously. Super appreciate it. Open up Xcode and let's dig back into our project. So if you recall, at the end of the last video, I had stubbed out basically first this call to get the genres, recommended genres for the current user. And then we take those genres and select 5 random genres and we pass it into get recommendations. And we were just printing out the JSON from that, but we still need to create an appropriate model object to decode it to. So one thing I'm going to do here is if we go back to our function, which is get recommendations with the genres, we are going to set a limit parameter here in the query parameters for the URL. And I'm going to do that so we can have only like 2 responses. So it's somewhat legible in the console to create a model out of. Otherwise, the API gives us like a bunch of items back and it's kind of impossible to even read it. So here's a response that we get back. So let me go ahead and we're going to create here. I think we created one already. We have recommended genres, but I guess we need to create another model for recommendations response. So let's create a new file. We are going to say recommendations response, just like that. And let's see, we can go ahead and let me close that bottom panel. Fun fact, Command-Shift-Y to close and open this panel. I'm a big advocate of these keyboard shortcuts. They're super handy, make you work a lot faster once you get the swing of things. We're going to create a struct, so recommendations response, and it's going to be codable, of course, because we are going to decode to it. Now let's go ahead and paste that guy in right there. I'm going to Control-I after highlighting to align everything. Now let's see what we've got in here. So looks like we have a top level key for seeds. And this is pointing to basically all the data, I guess, that it took in to get these tracks out. So we don't really care about this per se. So I'm gonna get rid of that. Now we have a key for tracks, which is an array of tracks. And that's the only other key. Now this is an array. And each of these is a track, I presume. Let me double check. Yep, that's a track as well. All right, cool, looking good. So we're gonna have a property in here called tracks. And this is going to be an array of track objects. And I think we created a model for this already. We called it an audio track. So let me call this audio track. We'll create it right down here and move it into that other file at the end. Let's go ahead and create this struct, codable, and let's bring everything in. So I'm just going to grab one of these tracks. We're going to delete everything else. And they should be fairly similar, if not actually identical, in their kind of nomenclature. So let's bring it in. So it has an album, which points to an album. It has artists, which points to artists, available markets, and it has a couple other things too. So we actually have a bunch of models for this stuff already. So album, let's do album first. So which album does it belong to? It looks like this is pointing to a single album and not an array. And I think we have a model for an album. So we have a album already. Let's see. So this album has artists in it and an album type. It also has available markets, external, ID, images. Let me go into album and let's see what we put in here. Yeah, so it looks like we basically have everything that we need. We have artist, total tracks, name, etc. So I don't think we need to create anything here for this one. So we can actually go ahead and get rid of albums. So that's simple enough. Now we have artists. Now this is an array of, it's actually not an array. It looks to be a single artist. Let me go ahead and hit Control-I because all the tabs are messed up and it's impossible to read. There we go, much better. So this is a array, I can tell it's a parenthesis of artist objects, and I think we have artists created already. Let's go ahead and say this is artists, array of artist, just like that. I'm gonna assume that it's correct without checking. We're gonna cross our fingers. All right, available markets. This one's easy. This one is an array of strings. And I never really mentioned it. If you guys don't really know how I'm getting these types, I'm kind of just visualizing like, okay, these look to be strings, right? Even though there's no quotes. That's a question I think I've gotten before of how do you know what the types are? You kind of just guess. And like this might be an integer or a floating point, right? Probably an integer for disk number because there's no decimal. So if you do have an error, you get it printed out in your console. So if you don't know what it is, there's no reason to really, be kind of throwing darts in the dark because if your app doesn't work, like it'll yell at you and tell you it doesn't work. So let's see, explicit. So this one looks to be an integer, but I'm going to guess that this is a Boolean because you can be explicit or you cannot be explicit, right? You can't really have anything else. So I'm going to get rid of that. Let's see, external IDs. I have no idea what this is, so we're going to ignore it. External URLs, we care about this because every single object apparently in Spotify's land has this. Say a dictionary with string and string, looking good. Href, don't really care about that. ID, pretty important. So we're going to say let ID is a string because that's how we're going to get the actual tracks out of it. The name, popularity, this is interesting. I wonder how that is calculated. So let's get the name first before I get excited and get ahead of myself. There is name, previous URL, nah, I don't really care about that. Track, don't care about that either. Deep link URL, don't care about that. I kind of want to keep popularity because for some reason I feel like it's cool. So we're going to say popularity. This is an integer, looks good. And that's it. That should be everything we need in our audio track. Let me just grab it and we're going to drop it into the audio track file that we created at the very beginning of this series. Looks like we have a playlist here too. So let me grab and move the playlist as well because we created a playlist here. And we don't want to start getting disorganized, even though we're probably disorganized already. Okay, cool. So we have this now. So let's try and decode to this model. Let's see, we called it, this is recommended. This thing right here, this recommendations response, looks like it's yelling at us that it's not codable. So let's see what the heck happened. Hit Command B, the error went away. Xcode was just being dumb. We're gonna go back to API caller, and instead of doing just raw JSON out of this, we are going to try to decode this thing right here. Let's change the result success type in the signature of the function. And let's also go ahead and print this guy out. Let's make sure we're actually getting it. Give it a run, Command-Shift-Y to open up your console. And let's see, all right, look at that. So we got a model. We can see the name here and all of the tracks and stuff inside of it. Let's go ahead and remove the limit here of 2 that we added. Let me actually add a limit of, let's say, let's go with, I don't know, 40. That's not 40. There we go, 40. We're gonna have 2 columns of maybe 20 tracks. And let's see if we get our model, which we do. It's pretty enormous as expected, so cool. So we can get rid of that print statement, and we are now good to go with all of our data needs for this the initial UI. Now, one thing that's important is we get like featured playlists, for example, but when we tap on a playlist, we'll need to get more information about it. So we're not quite done with all the API calls yet, but we are at a place where we can start making the UI. So in the next video, we're going to start doing that and get something a little nicer than just this empty screen. So thanks for watching. If you haven't liked the video, as always, make sure to destroy the button. Comment down below any questions, concerns, feedback, video suggestions. Love hearing from you guys. I try to reply to every comment in a pretty timely fashion. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.